I'm Professor Ngozalova, and I'm the Dean of the School of Clinical Medicine at UKZN, Durban, South Africa. Academic bullying is psychological violence amongst academics and results in abuse of the status of an academic. Academic bullying will not be tolerated in our institution. It is a serious crime to humanity and needs to be eradicated. Bullies are by nature cowards. No one has ever made himself or herself great by showing how small someone else is. As Big Kuni states, hurting someone's feelings is as easy as throwing a rock into the ocean, but you never know. You will never know how deep that rock will go. So let us all recognize the symptoms and signs of a bully and report bullies to our institutions. Thank you.
Workplace bullying is a physical or emotional harm that may negatively affect healthcare services. Bullying can take on various forms, whether they are horizontal or vertical within the workplace. This can include spreading rumors, undermining the victim's integrity, attacking their reputation or competence, assigning meaningless work tasks, withholding information, ignoring or excluding, public shaming, as well as making verbal and non-verbal threats. I am Tiandi Jager, Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Pretoria and Chair of the South African Committee of Medical Deans. Bullying in the health sector should not be tolerated.
Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, colleagues, and welcome to our third webinar on academic bullying. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and this is the last of our academic bullying webinars. We are so grateful today. We have some of our ex-registrars or consultants who have been victims of bullying who are going to share with us some of the experiences that they have had during their training. And we are also privileged to have a keynote speaker, Professor Ruleka Shekhar, who is going to talk to us and share her experiences about academic bullying. So I am going to ask Professor Ramlal to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Professor Dlova. Good evening, friends, colleagues, and a special greeting and welcome to our keynote speaker, Professor Beulah Shekhar. Professor Shekhar is the Emeritus Professor of Criminology at the Karunya Institute of Technology and Sciences, Coimbatore in India. Her responsibilities include teaching, research, and extension activities with special focus on collaborative research. She was formerly professor and head of the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice Sciences at the Manomannyam Sundaranar University, and also coordinator of the UGC-sponsored programs, Victimology and Victim Assistance, and the Human Rights and Duties Education. She is also the director of the Center for Empowerment and Women's Studies at MSU. She served as the Juvenile Justice Board member for the 3 southern districts of Tirunelveli, Tuticorin, and Kanyakumari, and was the director of the Childline Nodal Agency and the Sahodari Family Counseling Center project at Tirunelveli. The thrust area of all professors' work is public affairs, and social issues. Her research concentrates on the inequalities in various areas, increasing the vulnerabilities and denying access to justice to excluded groups like women, children, transgender persons, victims of crime and abuse of power. She significantly focuses on developing partnerships between researchers, policymakers, program developers, agency personnel, and other community groups. Professor holds degrees in women's studies, psychology, education management, human rights, victimology, counseling law, and Christian studies. She is also involved in the training of the police and the judiciary in the concepts of victimology to fill the gaps in services to victims of crime in the criminal justice system of India. Colleagues and friends, I'm sure you will agree with me that Professor Shekhar is indeed highly proficient and knowledgeable in the area of dealing with bullying from all aspects. And it is indeed a privilege and an honor for us to have her share her time and her expertise with us on this forum. Professor Shekhar, a very warm welcome to you once again, and we look forward to your address. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words. And I'm indeed happy and consider it a privilege to be part of this very important webinar to discuss academic bullying, which, as we all know, is prevalent all over the world and in various fields, including medical schools. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And let me try to share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, Prof.
Okay. So I would like to share my experience with academic bullying, the vulnerabilities, the impact, and the action. So let me begin with trying to answer these questions. We, as stakeholders, we always need to answer these pertinent questions. What is the role, our role as members of the academic fraternity? And why is it so crucial that we intervene now? And where do we begin? And when do we respond to this bullying, this challenge of bullying? And which are the areas in which we, the stakeholders, can make a difference? And how can we change the status quo? These are the 5 pertinent questions, the 5 W's in the one page that we will run through quickly through this presentation today. So I was thinking of saying something about the vulnerability. So how do some of us become vulnerable? And how is it that some of us have a diminished capacity in an academic setup to anticipate, to cope with, to resist, and to recover from the impact of bullying? And the challenge here is this concept is very relative and it is dynamic. So there is no one hat fits all as far as bullying in an academic setup is to be addressed. And when we try to assess the vulnerability, the type of academic bullying, and how people get to be vulnerable. So we like to, I like to run you through the background of this vulnerability. And we'd also like to see how do we thwart this vulnerability to academic bullying? And how do we go about reducing the impact of the bullying through, say, mitigation, through predictions, through warnings, through being prepared? And how do we build capacities to withstand and cope with this bullying? And finally, how do we tackle the root cause of this bullying? So we'd like to run through these things through this presentation. And the huge challenges, the onus is on the administrators and the teachers and the stakeholders. We become accountable for the occurrence of bullying, for the prevention of bullying and for the management of this phenomenon called bullying. So that's why it's so crucial that we understand where this is coming from. And in my opinion, I think this bullying, we kind of dilute it by using the term bullying. It's something like bluffing. So it kind of dilutes the seriousness of this challenge. And I think if you ask me, the violation of any right is bullying. So when it's a child below 18, any of the rights guaranteed under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the right to survival, the right to protection, the right to development, the right to participation. When any of these rights are violated, it is bullying. Similarly, for the adults, if there are any violations of the rights guaranteed under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the CEDAW, any of the civil, social, political rights that are denied because of the act of bullying, that would be a violation and that would be a serious thing. So we need to understand that it isn't a light thing that you can take lightly. It is a serious crime and it is a serious offense. So that is where we need to understand the magnitude of the impact of bullying. And we see that a lot of studies have shown that migrant workers, transgender persons in the academic setup, they are also victims of bullying and they are vulnerable. So again, I would say that they have rights under the International Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers. Similarly, the people with special needs, they have rights under the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So when any of these rights are violated, it would come under the umbrella of bullying. So having said this, we see that the dimensions of the victimizations and the violations, it can cover a whole gamut. There are legislations prescribing abuse of power when there is a power imbalance and one abuses the power. And there are legislations of sexual harassment at the workplace. And there are anti-bullying legislations as well in place. They have consumer protection acts, they have right to information, because one form of bullying is also withholding information. So all these legislations would really tackle bullying if you look at it in the true sense of the term. And the right to information, withholding information. Then there are loads of civil services conduct rules, which all the acts of bullying that we know definitely violate. And there are norms and sanctions that are culture specific. We could have different norms in India and different norms in South Africa, which are culture specific. And any violations of these norms would also fall under the umbrella of bullying. So when we look at bullying, it is not just peer-to-peer bullying. It would be bullying, it would be a 360 degrees, multidimensional academic bullying that we need to address. It could be student to student, scholar to the supervisor, faculty, the employer, employee, employer, whatever it could be between the heads and department, faculty, the peers, the subordinates, or it could be even from the consumers, people who come to our institutions. So it is really a multidimensional academic bullying. It's a huge challenge. We need to accept that and acknowledge that before we try to understand the impact and the action that needs to be taken to address this challenge of academic bullying. So we can draw a parallel when you look at it and look at the theories, that there are psychological theories trying to explain why one bullies and why one becomes the victim of bullying. You see that there are many explanations. We have the victim turned offender, we have the learned helplessness theory, we have the psychosocial coping theory, we have the routine activity theory, we have the cycle of abuse theory, and we have the adverse childhood experience theory. So I would say we need to tweak all these because these pertain to different violations, learned helplessness, the cycle of violence. They talk about it in the domestic violence scenario. and the coping theory as well in other scenarios. But we need to understand that in terms of bullying, how bullying is to be understood. So we need to tweak these theories a bit to see how they would try to explain the bullying that we see and we experience in the academic circles. So we look at bullying as an outcome of being bullied. We have theories which talk about the victim turned offender. So we need to understand how a bully, how a person who has been bullied becomes a bully. And another one is the cycle of violence, succumbing to the snare of the cycle of violence. So how does this happen? So we need to understand that as well. And relenting and resisting as a coping mechanism. And also with the childhood experience, how you bring baggage to the table and how you become a victim of bullying because of the experiences that you've had earlier in life. And also yielding to the victimization, submitting to it, giving up kind of the learned helplessness theory that Seligman talks about. And also another theory we have is a routine activity theory, which talks about making hay while sun shines, when there is no capable guardian, and when there is a motivated offender, how these crimes of bullying occur. So we'd like to understand and see how this happens. So this understanding of where it comes from, the etiology of this bullying behavior is very crucial to us understanding what action needs to be taken to address this bullying. So first, when you look at bullying as a coping mechanism, then some of them relent and some of them refrain from victimization behavior. There is this psychosocial coping theory, which talks about how when one is confronted with bullying, if they have the resources or the repertoire, if they have a good childhood, a lot of support in the family, then when they face bullying, they're able to cope. And the coping mechanism is a positive way in which they move forward. But when there is a lack of resources and the repertoire is bad childhood experiences, other victimization that have influenced them to accept this bullying, and either they accept it or they retort in a very violent manner. And this is a faulty coping process, which again throws them into the cycle of violence or the victim turned offender concept that we will look at. So you see that this bullying or the victimizer, he has externalized anger, and that comes from being victimized and feeling fragile, feeling helpless, and then you feel vulnerable and feeble, and that comes out as frustration and anger. So that's when that internalized anger becomes the externalized anger, and he becomes a person who bullies his colleagues or his peers. So the process, the anger because of unreconciled frustration. So that is what comes out as anger when he bullies another person. So you see that when we try to understand this victimizing behavior, we see that anger leads to this victimizing behavior, and we need to relook at it. Though it seems as if it's all pervasive and threatening, it seems to have its roots in something that lacks strength. In reality, it is a cry for help, you see, as a result of powerlessness, and stems from the feeble also. So you look at this, and we've heard of sheep in a wolf's skin. So this is the coping strategy. He's actually a very, very frightened and weak person who tries to portray himself or herself as a very strong person. So this is the concept. This is the way they try to cope with the anger that is in and the frustration that is in. So they turn to be bullies once they are trying to cope with this situation that they are in. So that's another way to understand the coping mechanism. And yet another way is to yielding to the learned helplessness. So we learn in the academic circles, you see that learned helplessness comes up quite regularly in this arena. So a child who succumbed to bullying will quickly begin to feel that nothing he does will have any effect. So there's no point trying. So he just succumbs, he or she just succumbs to the bullying. And this would also lead to early academic failure or low academic self-esteem. And this can impact his success later on in his life. And we see that this learned helplessness can also cause depression, anxiety, phobia, shyness, and loneliness. So they try to accept what is given to them, and they kind of succumb to their weakness. So it was Seligman who first spoke about this learned helplessness. So he worked on learned helplessness, but later on he found that the opposite, just the opposite of it, learned optimism is also possible. So like you learn to be helpless and submit and succumb to the circumstances, you can also learn to be optimistic, and you can put up a fight and be resilient and tackle the situation by learning to be optimistic and by learning to be positive. So there are a lot of methods of doing this. He has very clearly described it in his book called How to Change Your Mind and Your Life. This is a very interesting book which gives a lot of details about this. Due to lack of time, I just run through these things for you. Maybe you can have a look at it later. So the other one would be the succumbing to the snare of violence. This again is a theory that pertains only to the domestic violence so far. They look at it as a cycle of violence, and they explain the 4 phases. But from what I have seen from my experience, I would say that this is the very same thing that happens in the case of academic bullying, especially when it is with a supervisor and a scholar or a head of the department and a junior faculty in the department. So you see that there is a way in which the senior person lashes out to the external stressors, maybe some excuses like pressure at work, physical illness, fatigue, frustration, dissatisfaction, whatever it is. The target of his bullying would be the junior person, say a research scholar or a junior faculty. So this happens, and this is very similar to that tension building phase when the research scholar tries her best or his best to try to soothe the person's anger, but nothing helps. And then the incident of bullying, the lashing out, tension, and all this kind of violence and abuse happens when this incident of bullying comes to be. And finally comes the reconciliation when after the incident, they try to explain why it happened. And of course, the bullier tries to say that in some way, the person who was bullied has instigated or kind of provoked him to go into the bullying phase. So then the reconciliation also kind of blames the bully for being responsible for the act of bullying. And finally, sometimes apologies are given, and then this is called the honeymoon phase in the domestic violence scenario. So something to that effect happens here. And then there is a period of calm when everything is kind of settled. But then that cycle repeats. There is a rinse and repeat of the same thing. The bullying happens again and again and again. And we've seen this time and again with research scholars and supervisors, especially in the academic setting. So you see, this is another way we can look at bullying and coming to the childhood experiences, bringing baggage to the table. So how the childhood experiences also impact the person to either become a bully or to become a victim of bullying. So you see how violence in the home leads to higher rates of childhood bullying. Lots of studies have supported this. Children who are exposed to violence in the home will engage in higher level of physical bullying in the school. So they might have been victims at home and they become victimizers in the academic sector. So we need to understand, and this was a very old study called the Case Study, which identified 10 adverse childhood experiences. And if under these 3 categories of either rape, abuse, or neglect, or household dysfunction, if they had experienced any of these, the physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, or if they had been neglected, physical neglect, emotional neglect, or if they came from a household with mental illness, with incarcerated relatives, with drug, alcohol, divorce, if there was violence that they witnessed, then it was a kind of sure shot for him or her to become an offender or a bully or criminal when he grows up. So it shows that these incidents become a sad ball that he carries on his backpack. These rocks, these 10 are referred to as rocks by some of the researchers. So if you have 7 of these childhood experiences, you are a sure shot to be a bully or a criminal or a perpetrator of a crime. So this is another way in which we can understand where this bullying comes from. Another way of looking at it is making hay while sun shines. Like some of this, I think this is the easiest of the lot. It's easy to deal with this because here a crime happens when there is a motivated offender, when there is a suitable target, and when there's absence of a capable guardian. So then these 3 come together. This is when the bullying occurs. So this is easy when you bring in the capable guardian to support the victim. And when you add in the target, the victim is empowered to retaliate. And when you bring about punity for the crime that is committed, for bullying that is committed. So when these 3 things, one of these are removed, then it's easy to see that bullying does not happen. So the responses should also be 3-pronged because to prevent the convergence of these 3 factors. So when you look at it, you see the motivated offender, you try to end the impunity that goes with the bullying and assure the punishment. Certainty of punishment is more important than the severity of the punishment. And you make the person accountable, and bullying as a crime does not pay. And you make the target, the suitable target, reduce the vulnerability by target hardening, by talking to them about redressal mechanisms and where to go for help, where to report the bullying, and things like this. These would reduce the vulnerability of the target. And of course, the absence of capable guardians is a very important thing that we can do in our academic circles as well. Bystander apathy, we need to be vigilant as a society, as a community, as an institution. We need to be vigilant, and there should not be any silence for violence. We need to say something when we see something. And we need to understand that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So bullying is everybody's business. We need to be involved and try to increase the presence of capable guardians in the scenario to prevent bullying in the institution. Finally, we look at this victim to victimizer, bullying as an outcome of being bullied. So this, again, there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of study to show that there is theoretical evidence to show that there is a victim to victimizer threshold, and victims do become victimizer. And having been a victim of bullying is a strong predictor of becoming bully in future. So you see that here, when the person who was bullied was not given any assistance, he did not report the bullying. There was no reconciliation about with the bullying. There was no healing. He had internalized all that hurt and all that anger and all that frustration, and that coupled with the lack of coping skills came out as victimizing behavior. So this is the victim to victimizer that we see among these bullies. And also we understand that now that when a victim is bullied, he or she needs to be given the assistance that is needed for him to cope and to come out of it. So that would prevent him from becoming a bully again. So on the whole, when you look at it, it's not just one person that we need to look at. And in this context, I'd like to talk to you about Khalil Gibran's quote. He said that the guilty is often the victim of the injured. And we who would understand justice, how shall we, unless we look upon the deeds in the fullness of light? We cannot separate the just from the unjust and the good from the wicked, for they stand together before the face of the sun, even as the black thread and white thread are woven together. And when the black thread breaks, the weaver should look at the whole cloth and shall examine the loom also. So that is precisely what we need to do with this dealing with the act of bullying. We need to look at the background. We need to understand where it's coming from. And that would help us address this challenge of bullying in academic institutions. And also there is John Henner who has said that we need to teach them how to behave. When there is bullying, when there's antisocial behavior, we need to stop punishing them and teach them how to do the right thing. It's interesting that he says that when a child does not know how to read, we teach. Does not know how to swim, we teach. Does not know how to multiply, we teach. But when he does not know how to behave, we punish. So we need to look at that, look at the background and see how we can tackle this, how we can reduce this bullying in our institutions by looking back to see how to bring about a holistic healing, both for the bullier and the bullied. So in this, we need to understand the restorative justice process. This would be a better way to deal with this challenge of bullying, because the retributor would just focus on the punishment and it would really not bring about any healing. So with this restorative justice process, we understand who's responsible for the harm and who's responsible for repairing the harm. So this is a way forward, I would say, looking at the restorative justice process and not just focusing on punishment. So we need to see the 4 goals when we talk about the reformation of the bully, the repentance, the apology from the bully, the rehabilitation and rebuilding of the relationship between the bully and the bullied. Because inevitably it's an institution and they're going to be working together, if not today, tomorrow in another place. So there needs to be a healing. There needs to be a rebuilding of the relationship. So to understand this and to make this possible, we need to look at restorative justice as an alternative. And here, the restorative justice mechanism, it engages all the stakeholders. It assesses the harms and the needs. And there is an obligation to put things right. So this is what makes restorative justice a better alternative to the current justice system. So we understand that in order to move forward, we need to look back. We need to look at the background. We need to look at the history of the person who is bullying, and we need to tackle that as well. So we need to conduct victimization surveys. We need to identify cognizable bullies, because if they have a background of adverse childhood experiences or bullying per se, they would be cognizable bullies, people who have the potential to become a bully. And we need to initiate interventions and programs for these people once we identify them. And we need to orient the victims about the legislations, about the redressal mechanisms and the punishments and the serious outcomes as well. Like I said, it is not just one particular legislation. It covers a whole gamut of legislations, and it can be brought under any of these violations of the rights. So, we need to understand the background, and we need to really look back to move forward with this challenge of addressing bullying in academic institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Shekhar. Now I know why you're Professor Emeritus, for that amazing, inspiring, intriguing, eye-opening lecture. I knew for the first time, this is the second time I'm listening to a lecture, by the way, and I'm learning something new all the time. And I knew when I listened to you for the first time on that particular platform that I have to call you, we have to share your expertise and experience and this amazing approach to academic bullying with my colleagues in the School of Clinical Medicine. So I am so, so grateful for your sharing your expertise and your experience with us, and actually imparting armamentarium as well as ammunition for us to deal with bullying. It's not a simple problem. It's a psychosocial complex issue which we have to deal with, as you have explained. I mean, with the prevalences of about 32 to 65%, those are the prevalences that are quoted in the literature, whether it's academia or other non-academic platforms. So thank you so much for your amazing, really interesting lecture. We shall take questions at the end of the presentation. I am sure there's so much to learn from you, and also try and understand some of the complexities of the topic that we're dealing with this afternoon. Again, colleagues, this is something that will not be tolerated in UKZN, a school of clinical medicine that is under our leadership. We'll make sure also that this video is available on our website so that people can go back to it and listen and listen and listen, even for generations to come. So, colleagues, our next agenda item is going to be a video that we are going to play by Professor Chauke. These are all the deans, members of SACOM, South African Committee of Medical Deans, Dr. Professor Rantwane and Professor Glenn Thompson from UCT, from Pretoria, and from Chicago Mashako, SMU University. So over to you, IT assistant, to play those videos for us.
Bullying occurs across the different stages of existence. Workplace is also not spared from tactics of bullying for those that are in power and those that want to ascend into power. Academic bullying is big and used in areas of service, research, teaching, and training. In service, the use of words to create guilty feeling to the subordinates or to blackmail your superiors is a form of bullying, as is colleagues trying to undermine other colleagues to demonstrate their superiority in managing patients or in operating patients is a hostile behavior that constitutes bullying. In research, claiming credit for the work not done, or even to be included as a co-author or even a first author in an article that you have not worked on, is a form of bullying. Teaching and training, choosing specific people to teach or to train, it constitutes favoritism, which is a form of bullying. These issues that should be discouraged or rooted out in order for us to deal with the issues of academic bullying.
Bullying behavior is often encouraged by peers who excuse such conduct for firmness, for a no-nonsense attitude, or a confirmation of dedication to work or loyalty to patients. Sometimes it is dismissed as eccentric behavior and that people must just learn to live with it. When complaints are received, they are often dismissed with the words, "He may not be the nicest person around, but he produces results. Try understand him and you'll be okay." Oftentimes, the perpetrators of bullying do not themselves perceive their conduct as such, but rather as a manifestation of leadership, because they are required to provide guidance or are the ones ultimately held accountable. So, academic bullying can be intentional and targeted, but sometimes it is random and unintended. But whatever the reason, such conduct often leaves in its wake broken, bruised, and dysfunctional victims. Universities should therefore create safe spaces for acts of this nature to be exposed and dealt with. Standards of professional behavior must be agreed and clear policies implemented to protect the integrity of the academic enterprise.
There's a real concern around bullying in our health sciences fraternity at the moment. Part of the problem, I believe, is the distance between junior doctors and their seniors, those who supervise them. My own feeling is that we have to make real the concept of a community of practice where junior doctors are legitimated for their lack of experience. But I think we're only going to solve the problem of bullying especially in medicine, when we start to call our colleagues out. It's no longer okay that we sit in a tea room with the bully and we don't speak about the behavior that is inappropriate. So colleagues, until we call people to order ourselves, we're unlikely to change the situation.
Thank you so much to our IT assistant there for playing those videos for us from our colleagues who are deans in the country. You have heard there are various forms of bullying, even demanding to be a co-author in a paper where you have not contributed significantly. That is a form of academic bullying. We have also heard how our silence actually perpetuates and perpetrates the problem of bullying. So we all have to heed and listen to what is affecting us directly and try and do something about it. Colleagues, now we're moving on with the program. We are going to hear testimonies from some of our consultants or registrars. They are now, and I'm so grateful to the doctors who have actually agreed to share their experiences for us. One of the doctors actually said to me, Prof, we don't want to be called, come here and say you are victims. We want to say, we want to share the testimonies and the experience that we have had, because we have not come out to be victims, we've come out being stronger. And that is amazing and a great attitude to adopt, but that does not apply to everyone. So first is Dr. Lerato Katali. She's a young and ambitious woman who was born and raised in north of Durban. She completed MBCHB at the University of Cape Town, spent an internship in community service in KZN, namely Mahatma Gandhi Eddington Complex, as well as Charles Johnson Memorial Hospital and Escort Provincial Hospital. She then subsequently joined the registrar program in anatomical pathology in KwaZulu-Natal and has since qualified as a pathologist. Dr. Lerato Katali, once more, thank you so much for agreeing to share your story, as painful as it may be, because you go through the whole painful process that you went through when you were training. But sharing this with us can only strengthen potential victims or colleagues or people who have gone through the same experience. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Prof. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so just as you've mentioned, I think the difficulty with preparing for this was that I was trying to establish how to share what I went through so that it's of benefit to someone else who finds themselves in a similar position. And in doing so, I wanted to do it without necessarily reducing this to sharing of, scandalous details of what has happened in a specific department, or even worse, be seen as a bitter individual. So, I say this because I've seen with shock how people that execute acts of bullying are very good at portraying themselves as kind and caring individuals, where only those that are close to them know the real truth about them. So as much as my journey is a success story of sorts, in a sense that, I set out to train in a certain discipline and be a specialist, I personally don't have an algorithm of how it all managed to work out, but I can comfortably and emphatically say that my support system, which includes my family and people that I've met throughout my journey, have played an immense role in me getting through those very tragic years. So I can safely say that I started experiencing bullying post-medical school. So when I started working from internship, and the bullying varied according to, each discipline. But an unpleasant moment that I can remember was that I felt that my rights as a human being were violated. So I was threatened by one of the head of departments that my logbook wouldn't be signed because I prioritized going to an antenatal visit. And I remember when we started off in that discipline in Obs and Gynae, where we were specifically told that the only time you can attend to anything is when you post-call. Other than that, you have to be at work. And obviously, I mean, when it came time for me to choose my health, I chose that instead. And I had done the proper channels and informed my boss at the time. However, after reporting back to work after the antenatal visit, I was told that my logbook wouldn't be signed. And luckily at the time, there was a junior doctors association. So they helped me through that incident where I was eventually signed off. Registrar training was a different journey altogether. I don't think anything in my entire life could have prepared me for what I was going to experience personally and witness. In summary, I feel that I witnessed people's children, heads of families, and individuals seeking academic apprenticeship being shredded to pieces. I mean, I was exposed to utterances such as, I'm starting to doubt your MBCHB. Do you deserve your MBCHB? You don't know anything. And in instances of colleagues that were from neighboring countries, I'll send you back to your country if you don't behave, or you won't make it in this discipline. And these were words that were said to colleagues in open spaces. And screaming and shouting was the order of the day. There were, however, colleagues who we knew without a doubt would always get praises, and they'd also be given opportunities to excel academically. So for example, being able to be a part of research, where for me, this is something I've only actually started thinking about closer to qualifying and even after, where as a registrar, my main concern or my main aim was to survive and finish. So I think that also stunted my growth. I also remember instances where if you had to speak or had thoughts contrary to the senior at the time, a war would begin. So it would either be a vocal war, where harsh words are said to you in public, or alternatively, it would be a silent war where everyone would turn against you and you just feel unwanted at work. And I mean, who would want that? Who would want to spend most of the time in a workplace where no one wants to be associated with you? And I think during those times, complying was the order of the day. You complied to survive. And with time, I think I grew to resent this discipline that I had longed to be a part of and train in. And as the situation worsened, I started having feelings of anxiety. So initially these started like on Sunday evening. And then as things got worse, it started on Saturday morning. I remember Saturday morning, I start feeling anxious about having to go to work on Monday. And that's not how life should be. And I even remember instances where some of my colleagues and I would share things that we were going through at the time, the psychosomatic symptoms that we developed, and possibly even laugh about them, which I think is just was pathologically therapeutic. And we'd even joke about the fact that we're part of a military camp. And I think possibly that laughter helped us to survive. And even more so at work, things like laughing were kind of forbidden, because then if you laughed or were happy, then it meant that you probably weren't working. And that meant trouble for you. So I think the most painful part that I went through at work, I mean, for most of my training, I was ignored, which was perfect, because getting unwanted attention is exhausting mentally. So there were times where there were meetings that were tactfully arranged, where you would be called in a meeting full of consultants and lab managers, and accusations and insults will be hurled at you, and some of them were lies. But obviously you couldn't say that that's not true, because then it would mean that you're in denial and you don't want to be, held accountable. And in retrospect, I think these were strategically done when we were most vulnerable. So if you're preparing for exams, so be it college exams, or if it was just a time deemed convenient, so to exasperate you to such a point that you leave the department. And I mean, some of my colleagues were given a pre-written resignment letters and were told to, sign. I mean, some didn't. And some were lucky enough to get an apology later. But I think after a while, I grew tired of it. I lost respect of the leadership and wasn't really bothered. And I think the only thing that kept me, or that encouraged me to speak out, was that seeing those junior to me being bullied at such, it was really painful. During those times, I couldn't work. I came to work, was physically there, but mentally not. And sure, I think post all these traumatic events, the task now is just to try and constantly reflect, constructively on the experience and how it impacts how I engage with others that I work with. Because when you go through something so painful for many years on end, it's difficult to get past that, especially if you're a group of individuals in the same environment still, and are to be the new crop of leaders. I think counseling and extensive guidance, are a must, where we need to ensure that we don't now become the new bullies. So there's lots to share, but I think that's just a summary of what I went through.
Thank you so much, Lerato, for sharing your challenging narratives and experiences with such, optimism and aplomb. Really, I see some messages also, comforting you on the chats. Actually, because I had just been appointed as a dean at that time, how you were in my office and I still have pictures of you, because and I took a picture. I said, please, can I take a picture? And I wanted to take that picture because I wanted to look at it at home and make sure that I do something about it. That's why I took that picture of you, and I still have it. But you rose to the challenge, you changed, you really embraced and you listened. And thank you so much. I'm aware actually that one of the registrars were in a similar department as yours. I think one of them also had issues and had depression, and one of the perpetrators of bullying took the tablets and flushed them in the toilet. That was tragic. So colleagues, I'm sure you can understand why I'm an advocate against bullying and how I'm passionate about this, because all of these, they get to me, and I had to do something about it. Thank you so much, Lara. So we shall take
pleasure
in the end. So and next speaker.
Hi, I see that Prof. Lova has lost connection. So Vera, can you introduce the next speaker, please?
Marianne, do you know what's going on with the sound, please?
Hi, Severa, we can hear you. Prof. Lova has lost connection. So can you maybe introduce the next speaker?
Oh, my apologies. I thought we were awaiting the speaker. Apologies, colleagues. I would like to call to the microphone now, Dr. Tende Makofane. He's a third-year medical registrar at UKZN in the Department of Surgery. And he was born in a small timber plantation town in Mpumalanga. And he's been to a high school at the Township School and graduated at UCT in 2009. He is hoping to subspecialize after he becomes a surgeon. Dr. Makofane, thank you for joining us this evening to share your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Ramlal. Well, I'll share some of my experiences with academic bullying and some of my thoughts on the subject. First is to say that I think there's two key drivers to academic bullying. The first one I think was well elaborated on in the series of webinars. And this one is that in the medical fraternity, we do have a subculture of bullying where we all experience bullying from our junior years or when we are juniors. And then it becomes a subculture in our profession. Some of us grow in the profession to become senior doctors, and then we become bullies ourselves. And the reasons and the intricacies of the subculture, I think, were well captured by inputs from Prof. Soraya Sidat and Prof. Beulah Shika. So I won't expand much on that. The second driver of academic bullying that I think needs to have a spotlight cast on is that we all have our historical and societal influences that shape who we are before we are scholars. So in South Africa, we've got a very painful past, that of apartheid. And academia has never been immune to that influence. We have a history of South African universities that were the most well-resourced universities were white universities, and the most under-resourced universities were those for people of color. There's been efforts to try and change the landscape of universities ever since the advent of democracy. But these contradictions have gotten to play themselves out, and academia is somewhat of a battleground, not only of ideas, but of existence. Previously privileged people, of course, feel that the entry of the previously disadvantaged groups, be it people of color, Africans, or women, they see that as a threat to their privilege. And some would even feel the need to protect their territory. Counterproductive values of classism, sexism, racism, and tribalism do play a role in academia, and they do act as important driving forces to behind academic bullying. Reflecting back on my undergrad years at UCT, it wasn't official, but just in interactions with a diverse array of students, we got to be told things like we have just taken up spaces of more deserving white students at UCT. People who are nostalgic about their days of exclusive sectarian privilege would say there's too many blacks or there's too many women. They don't understand what's going on, as if our presence in academia is an unwelcome aberration of nature. Those who no longer enjoy exclusive presence in academia have found ways to regroup and fight back. We see this in clinical practice. It manifests itself in word rounds in academic meetings where the over-reporting and amplification of mistakes we make is done, and that's followed by disparaging remarks made on our name, so as to create an impression that we are incompetent, unintelligent, affirmative action candidates who are not worthy of the registrar or fellowship programs, fellowship posts that we occupy. Reflecting on my initial years as a junior registrar in surgery at Pietermaritzburg under UKZN, I initially came across a diverse group of consultants from different social and racial backgrounds. I saw this as a source of motivation because I believe that the more you're exposed to teachers of different backgrounds, the richer your experience is going to be. But this hope was soon crushed as I became exposed to very toxic, blame-orientated environment, or the approach that some of my consultants used in their interactions with us was very blame-orientated, not with an interest to groom us or help us grow in any way, but I'd like to think it had ulterior motives. I've had consultants who had no interest to teach or guide me, but were very religious in scrutinizing and pointing out my faults, whilst they were being rather nurturing towards juniors from their own kind or from their own social backgrounds. I've heard threats from those who were meant to teach me, but had no interest to do so. Threats like, I won't survive Pietermaritzburg like so-and-so who was here before and was made to leave. Their hostility would often be justified as it just being a matter of concerned consultants who are looking out for what is in the best interest of patients. But I disagree with that. Any senior doctor who cares about what is in the best interest of the patients would make concerted efforts to teach and develop the skills of junior doctors instead of terrorizing them and crushing them. These things don't happen by accidents. They are designed to make further learning and training undesirable and intolerable to some of us who are perceived as a threat to others' historical privileges, and to get us to vacate the registrar and fellowship posts that we occupy out of frustration and ridicule. Many Black registrars have been made to crash out of the program in this particular fashion before. However, if your consultant is bold enough to raise an alarm about your deficiencies, is that not an acknowledgement of their failure to lead and to guide you through the profession? So in my experience, instead of cowering and quitting the registrarship program, I opted to be confrontational and to raise these issues and bring them out in the open. In the process of doing so, I earned myself the title of being a difficult registrar. But nonetheless, the situation in Pietermaritzburg has since changed for the better. Some of my consultants who previously failed to lead and to guide us have become better teachers and better leaders in their own right. And for that, I do commend them, although there is still room for improvement. Perhaps things can improve everywhere if we are not shy to ask pertinent questions. For instance, why is it a norm? Why is it such a norm in our hospitals and universities that in certain departments, you'll have a group of academics, departmental heads, consultants who make concerted effort to recruit people of their own kind to their particular disciplines. They mentor them, they groom them to excel, whilst making the very same environments intolerable to anyone who is not of their own kind. Academia has been the most hostile environment for African women in particular, as they always had to struggle the triple whammy of racism, sexism, and classism before they can even realize their dreams. For an indigenous African woman, academia is somewhat of a survival of the fittest contest. If you see an African woman making it through academia, it is because she's tough as nails until proven otherwise. This should not be the case, though. Spaces that are dominated by white South Africans tend to be very hostile towards people of color. Spaces dominated by men tend to be hostile towards women. You come to KZN as well, and you find spaces that are dominated by Indians that are hostile towards Africans. And as an African, you'll have your intelligence capabilities questioned and your every move watched. This is not with the intent to guide you and develop you in the profession, but rather with the ulterior motive to make you feel unwelcome and to hasten your resignation or departure. The problem with all this is that it's a slippery slope in which everyone becomes painted with the same brush, and an unparalleled broader societal resentment towards sectors of our population that are perceived as discriminatory will ensue. When a white or an Indian person causes an offense, their entire community becomes labeled as such because people are tired of the disrespect and the ridicule. That abusive rant during a word round and behind closed doors does not end there. It spills over to the communities that we come from, and it plays into our broader societal contradictions. It also plays into political opportunism. You've all heard remarks made by the likes of Julius Malema. We often hear in our communities people saying, don't give white people leadership positions, they'll just use them to advance their own kind and deny everyone else a chance. Others would say Indians are even worse than the whites. This resentment has far-reaching consequences. When you demonstrate that you're not willing to share opportunities, you're inadvertently signaling that in order for other people to realize their dreams, first they need to either get rid of you or minimize your influence. So the mass purging of white consultants or white academics has found expression in some South African universities already, but is replacing one race group with another the solution? Is it in the best interest of the future that we desire for ourselves and for our children? White and Indian youths may be denied opportunities in future if their communities are painted as hostile and that paint dries up and sticks. That will deprive us of their contribution and prevent us from having a diverse cohort of future leaders and intelligentsia if we do not take a step back and come up with more suitable ways of coexisting. South Africa should be benefiting and thriving from contributions that are made by its people, as diverse as they are. And universities should help to bring the best out of our talented citizens. This situation can still be salvaged through timely and decisive leadership and meaningful action. I just don't see this kind of leadership emanating from politicians. I think universities need to rise to the occasion and play a bigger leadership role in society. Our beloved former statesman, Rolihlahla Mandela, sought to soothe political tensions during a very hostile political transition period in our country by advocating the concept of a rainbow nation. To date, that notion became a pipe dream, as we are very much still a divided society. Perhaps because we overlooked important building blocks to nation building, and universities have failed to rise to the occasion. We can only move forward on a positive note when universities re-engineer themselves as inclusive centers of intellectualism and academic excellence, free of societal prejudices. Anyone coming through the corridors of a university from our fragmented society should leave the university a better human being, more tolerant, better enlightened, culturally sensitive, respectful of others, and most importantly, valuing the contribution of others instead of seeing them as a threat to their privilege. Societies would have never benefited from the works of the likes of Prof. Bongani Mayosi if he was never allowed to learn and to express, to find the expression of his personal passions, values, and talents within the university. There is no particular race, sex, or socioeconomic grouping that possesses the monopoly of intelligence. The contribution of everyone from different walks of life should be encouraged and embraced, and that is a lesson universities should be teaching to the broader society. Where society fails to lead and to build, the universities need to rise to the occasion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Makopane. You know, it's heartbreaking to hear some of the narratives that you are sharing with us. I am reminded that we had to go to Maritzburg, not last year, the other year. It was myself, Prof. Nama, Prof. Ramlal, and I think Professor Singh, when you were so bold and took the great amount of courage and sacrifice from you to handle the bull by its own. I think it's really people like you who need to be celebrated for being bold, because most of the time people will say, you know, I don't want to be victimized. These people are going to be my exams. But had you not done what you did, and now you are sharing the positive changes that you observed in the Department of Surgery in Maritzburg, that is, you know, everything that you have said, which is so positive and so heartwarming. And it is really registrars like you who decided to go for it and sacrifice whatever it meant and the repercussions that a potential outcome of your boldness to address the situation. So for me, you are one of the registrar heroes, because nothing could really stop you from addressing the problem. And now you are in an amazing department with everything that is positive, and yet registrars left surgery, many of them, and many of the things that you're actually sharing, we've also experienced as medical students, as registrars, and as consultants in the School of Clinical Medicine in UKZN. But we opted to take the positive path and say, you know what, this is what I went through during my training, but I will never, ever subject any registrar or student to what I went through. That's what some of us decided to opt for, because that made us better people, made us feel better, and again, to continue to be role models. There's a number of comments on the chat. The truth is we don't have the safe spaces that allow us to talk without fear of being victimized. And there's something here, wow, profound contribution that does not sound like it comes from victimized people. Well done for not choosing bitterness, but growth. Love that from one of the comments. And really today, colleagues, without us unearthing the pains and the tragedies of academic bullying, we also want to heal at the same time. Wherever you are, whoever you are, in whatever department you are, we want to heal the victims, and we also want to heal the perpetrators of this really anomaly. Thank you, colleague. I'm missing my agenda here, Mary-Ann, because I lost contact. Do you perhaps know who's our next speaker? Maybe Suvira, if you can just introduce the next speaker.
Sure, thank you, Prof. Glover. So our next speaker is Dr. Darlena Tembisile Mbebe. And she is a vascular surgeon who's currently working in Pietermaritzburg at Graves Hospital. Born and bred in KwaZulu-Natal and raised in KwaMashu, she completed her undergraduate studies at UKZN, and she specialized in general surgery also at UKZN, and she's now subspecializing in vascular surgery. Welcome, Dr. Mbebe.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Prof, for giving me this platform to actually share my experiences in terms of bullying. Obviously, I'm older. I'm a subspecialist. I'm a vascular surgeon now, having studied in UKZN. But how I wanted to start this is to for you to get to know me. My name is Tembi, named by my grandmother, and I grew up KwaMashu. So you can imagine already from the back of my mind, I'm already in a place where I come out of a place where majority of the guys that are surrounding me or the environment that surrounds me is not conducive, it's not for growth. So I come out to want to be better. So there is something in me at that point. So I'm a wife already with a mother of 5, married to Mr. Makatini, and I wear different hats. And it's a privilege to actually wear those hats. And sometimes they are heavy, but it is definitely a privilege to wear those hats. So my bullism actually started when we started mixing in terms of starting to create a united rainbow nation of South Africa. So I knew from that point that I wasn't wanted. So growing up as a little girl, I knew that I wasn't wanted in those spaces. But unfortunately, I had a mom who didn't subscribe to all those things. I mean, if you went to school and you didn't speak English, you needed to be dropped down to a lesser grade that you are at. And my mother, unfortunately, was one of those women who is and will always be my role model. She fought for me. So in terms of then having to go to medical school, you're just swimming with the fishes. I mean, you were happy, let's get this becoming a doctor. And then you realize it's not enough and you want to become a general surgeon. Now, you're becoming a general surgeon in a male-dominated field, you're Black, you're female. So bullism for me was not, it wore many hats, like Dr. Makofani has said. It was racist, it was sexist, and it was done right. I mean, for example, I'll be in a place like I went for my vascular interview, and I got it, and I was told by one of the fellows, listen, you know how you got it, it's because you're Black and you're female. And my reply is very simple. Thank you for the platform. I shall make sure I use it because I don't deserve it in your eyes. And I never went. That's why I had struggled with victim. I never had the room to feel like a victim because I knew I was never wanted. So I needed to make do with what I had and move forward. And I'm a giant today for many reasons. And I hope women who are in fields that are dominated by many adversities, besides just being men, by many adversities, just realize what they want and focus on that. So when I got into vascular surgery, let's start with general surgery. So general surgery, I knew I wasn't wanted. I mean, I was victimized in front of registrars, of interns, just to be, literally, it had nothing to do with consultants. You're seeing a registrar would make sure that you know that you're not competent. I mean, as you hear me, I speak good English. So I didn't know what it was about because I thought, I'm here, I'm willing to learn, I'm like a sponge. So that wasn't, you coming here to take our jobs. You coming here, you are favored. Oh, ANC, oh, wonderful transformation candidate. So I grew up with all those things, and I'm well aware of that. I didn't apologize for being Black. I didn't make myself Black and female. I'm very proud of all those things. So in moving forward, then general surgery became, I mean, going and complaining about it. The platform for any complaint is not, it's not there. I mean, you go there, you complain, everybody's mail is like, if it's too much for you there, why don't you try something else like dermatology? Unfortunately, Mina, when you say no, you are saying, let me try ways of trying to combat what you've just said. It's like a challenge to me. It's a deformity, I should think. So having done general surgery, and it took me years general surgery. I mean, most of my bosses would say, oh, you know what, you've done a disservice for yourself by having children, or, you know, you've taken so long because you make too many things. I mean, I'm married to a traditionalist, a beautiful husband. I'm not going to wait to finish my degree to have children. I needed balance. That's why I said I've got too many hats, and some of the hats are well within my reach. So having done all that, and then I come to vascular surgery in UKZN, and I thought, yes, this is what I wanted to do. First, adversity is, why are you going? You're not going to cope. You've got children. I mean, my kids are 1 year apart, and I'm thinking, it is not a disability. It is not a disability. It can never be a disability in my books. I wanted these children, and therefore I'll make use of having these children and still strive to get what I want. Bullyism is different for me. It's the racist bit. I think everybody experiences it, and I think it's a sexist, and the idea that somebody needs to break you to a point where you question. There's a point where you can see pus coming from the wound, and I'm a consultant already. And you question yourself and you think, is this a septic wound or not? So racism deals with you in many facets, mentally, psychologically, and unfortunately, it goes into many fields. It goes into your family lifestyle, into your children. You become a different person. You have to find ways into which you can cope with it. I'll give you an example. Like, I'd come in the morning and I'm always happy, though sometimes I'm not, but most of the time I am. I'd come and say, oh, good morning. But like, is that the way you speak to your seniors? You have no regard. And we're like, because I said morning. And then talking back, that meant, oh, you're defiant. Let's see how far we can break you. And I was broken in many respects. I'm saying these examples because I think being given this platform as a female, being given this platform as being Black, and Dr. Makofane has actually put it very well, is that you're fighting many adversaries. People think you come to work and you're a doctor, but you have fought many adversaries to actually make it to medical school. You have fought many adversaries to actually make it to wherever that you want to do. Because most of us don't have silver spoons in their mouth. We're actually born. Actually, when I speak to people, I actually ate out of a bin. And no one will believe that I actually ate out of a bin. And everybody looked at me and I thought I was privileged because I spoke better English. I was a clever Black. So in that sense, I found myself in many instances have to explain myself as a woman, in a sense where I'll give an example because I think examples hit home. An example make us better people for somebody who's experiencing it to realize it's actually not you. It actually exists until somebody names it and somebody defines it and says it's actually bullyism. It's actually a form of abuse that I cannot explain to you how far, how deep it goes. I'll give an example. Like, we've been theater. In that time, excuse everyone who finds it ill, I was menstruating. And luckily that day I was stocking, which I thought God really loved. So I was wearing stockings and I could feel the blood is drinking down my leg, and I used to just rub it. I just rubbed it against myself, and I said, oh, well, when I get out of here, I'm going to go buy stuff. So I took the patient to ICU, said to the guy who was junior to me at the time, please, everything is fine. The monitor's on. I just need to get my woman bib. After that, I had to explain why, how, and when. So from going to buy my woman bibs to having to come back, it was like the patient is dead and the patient is well taken care of in ICU. So I was made to feel, in a sense, throughout my career, I was made to feel as if, one, I don't belong there. I'm so stupid that I cannot even put two sentences together, that they walk around actually looking at me as a transformation candidate. You do me a favor in my own country. I'm a transformation candidate. And that changed the whole dynamics on how I saw things. Obviously, I knew as a woman, I knew coming from this place and coming to a place where it's a male-dominated field, I knew that I had to work extra hard, and I knew that I had to suppress a lot of things. But I didn't know I had to get to a point where I named the perpetrator a bully, because you have to survive. You go to anywhere, they're all men. You go anywhere, or you don't belong here. Or if you don't belong here, well, if you can't survive it, I know you've got kids. I know somebody gives you a better option to actually do something that will encompass your future. I'm hungry, I'm ambitious, and this is what I want. How dare you tell me this is not where I belong? So I'm grateful for this platform, and naming it for what it is has actually helped me. And it's platforms like this that actually have opened up for me to take a moment and sit back and actually say, yes, it is bullyism. And yes, it hurts a lot. And yes, there's a lot of groundwork that I need to do as an individual to, one, not become a bully to somebody else. It's so easy to become a bully to somebody else. It's so easy to smell fear from somebody else when you're a bully. It's being consciously aware and consciously living, because the titles are there. And unfortunately for females, majority of them, some of them, yes, some of them are being awarded for their titles. But for me, I still, till today, have to prove to juniors who obviously are not of my color, to prove to them that when I say it's peripheral vascular disease, it is, So it changes. It changes in many forms and shapes as bullyism. And I'm happy for platforms like this that we address it. And I hope that in our institution as UKZN, because we were once underprivileged varsity, for us to come and be great, because we are great. There's no mistake that everybody in this platform is great, and those who are listening, we need to take that fire and show the world that we can become united in terms of the Rainbow Nation. We cannot undo things that are done, but we can from now go with the fire of wanting to change. So Prof. Lova, thank you very much for inviting me to this space. Obviously, there's so many experiences that I want to say, but I think the one thing that I want to come across is that do not apologize for who you are. Do not apologize for being ambitious. Do not apologize for the race that you're born to, that nobody else in the world can change. Even you can make your skin lighter, you can wear weave, or you can make your skin, because people, different races are experiencing bullyism. You need to take that fire in you to prove to yourself first before you prove to your perpetrator that you're worth being here. So it's a total mind game that you have to conquer, because as I said to Prof, I never heard or even say those words to myself of being a victim, because I didn't have the time to sit and break it down to myself. This one is getting preferred treatment. Therefore, I just summarized it. I just looked at the goal and I went for the goal. And I'm a vascular surgeon today, and it's dominated by men, and I did it. I was once told, I fell pregnant before I wrote my exam, and I was told, you've now destroyed your career. You couldn't even close your legs. Those things are told to junior staff so that it infiltrates to me, that I couldn't even close my legs. To whom should I close my legs? To my husband. So I destroyed my career, and I stand today to tell you, I went in, I wrote once, I passed once, I did my orals. I wasn't the best, but guess what? The peers at the table thought enough for me to be sitting here and proudly saying, I have worked damn hard to be where I am, and I'm damn proud. So to my bullies, I always say this to my juniors, I thank them very much, because this fire in me tells me that I'm here to change the world. So I thank you all for allowing me to speak, and I speak a lot. So I thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and Dr. Bebe, for your very eloquent narrative of an emotionally triggering account of your training. It is so painful. My heart is bleeding. But you know what? I'm glad that you finished your training and now you're a vascular surgeon, and you are so positive about your experience. So colleagues, I know we're running out of time, but it's very important for us to go through all of this. So we are now going to take comments and questions to our guest speaker, Professor Shekhar, as well as questions to the, the victims of academic bullying. Thank you, Professor Shekhar. So, Marianne, can you assist me with the questions, please?
Sure. This one is from Dr. Larata Katali. Dr. Bola, do you find that bullies recognize themselves as such, especially when they are adults? Do you find that they seek help to change?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That is a very important question. And yes, I think half the challenge is getting them to accept that they have an issue and they need to deal with it. But more often than not, we do not have them accepting that, and they always live in denial, and they blame their victim for instigating it and instigating the bullying, etc. So yes, they do not accept that they have a problem and they need to address it. I think it's more like the alcoholics. You can draw a parallel. You need to have the challenges getting them to accept and then bring them to the table to make that effort to change. So yes, from my experience, it's difficult to get them to accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shekhar. You also have a comment here. What is the university leadership doing to discourage academic bullying against registrars, to the effect that certain rotations are the preserve of the few? Maybe I can comment on this. I don't know, is Musie from HR? And yeah, and I think other HODs can also comment. I think personally, to respond to the question, this is one of the reasons why we have these webinars to sensitize. This is the first webinar on bullying in the 70 years of the medical school. So it is because we have recognized these issues and we are now raising them. Also, you will be seeing a lot of posters that we have prepared in all lecture rooms, in all areas where students sit, and they'll also be online. And also there'll be an, anonymous call where you can actually phone anybody. The Marianne can tell us about it, or Musi, if you have experienced bullying. But we also want to hear from you, and don't keep these challenges that you experience in the departments quiet. You must raise them, bring them to the fore. And because as a dean, I heard about these issues, that's when I decided to come up with these webinars. And I know that there's a number of doctors that have been expelled from the university because of academic bullying. So we do something, we do something about it, but we will not know until you alert us of these issues. And experience that in your discipline, there's favoritism in terms of rotations. Please report that to your department, head of department, and tell your head of department we are not happy about this. And then if they don't respond, bring it straight to the dean's office, and we will certainly do something about it. You'd like to say something? And just introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Professor Lova. I'm Busisiwe Ramabodu. I'm the Director for Human Resources Development at UKZN. So just to quickly respond, the university does have processes for dealing with bullying. However, we rely on staff members to report it. Previously, when I spoke, I indicated that we can have all these nice policies and processes for reporting and dealing with bullying. However, if staff members do not come to the fore in terms of reporting, then those policies are rendered ineffective. So, and in fact, the reporting includes people that see bullying happening. So when you see it, don't become a silent observer when you can see that your colleagues are suffering. So it is important that those of us who are experiencing it do actually come to the fore and report it. And those of us who are observing it happen to our colleagues,
we come to the fore and we report it, because it's only then the policies and the processes that we have at the university become effective. So that's what I can say on whether the university has processes or not. And just to say that there is the fear of being victimized. However, I would like to encourage staff not to fear, because once you report, the university has processes to protect you from being victimized. So we must not be scared to come to the fore because we think that we can be victimized or we will be deemed to be difficult individuals, or whatever things people say to try and deter you from actually dealing with the issue. So thank you, Professor Tova.
Thanks, Busi. You are so right. You did mention this, that you need evidence. You need this to be reported to you, because there's nothing you can do if it's not reported to you. Same with me as the dean. I need this to be reported to myself. If there's some discrimination or favoritism or racism in your discipline, I am here. My doors are open for you to report all of this, and we will certainly take it down. We have consultants who have been rehabilitated, and they're doing well. Perhaps some of them were not even aware that they are bullying, but it's good to see that the progress has been great in some of the disciplines that we had to deal with. Mary Ann, do you have another question?
No, there's no other questions, but if people would like to raise questions live, they can just raise their hand now and I can unmute them.
Okay, sure, please do so. Yeah, there's amazing chats here. I'm so proud of you guys. Dr. Mbele, all of you are so amazing and inspirational. Thank you for paving the way for us. One says decolonization is the way to go. Yeah, perhaps I can ask Professor Sheknak. Professor Shekhar, how do we deal with perceptions? And, sometimes we don't want registrars or junior consultants to do as they like, because this is what some would say that, no, when you are trying to get the registrars to present or prepare for their work, and if you scold them for that, then it's taken as academic bullying. That's the first question. The second question is, how do we rehabilitate issues of racism, issues of discrimination and favoritism? How do we deal with that? How do we also get disciplines to talk about this and engage and have conversations about this and not shy away from these issues?
Thank you for those questions. Yes, I think it is important that the code of conduct clearly stipulates what is acceptable behavior and what is not. Disciplining is important, or chiding for wrongdoing is important, but there should be a clear-cut line which tells you which is permissible reprimanding and which is not. So you cannot extend the reprimanding to the level of bullying. That is what really happens. They use the error committed or that little bit of mistake that the junior has made, and they blow it out of proportion, and that's when the bullying really comes in. So it's important, I think, the administration and the authority should give clear-cut instructions about what is permitted when you are correcting a person or reprimanding a person. And I think most of the codes do have that. So there are do's and don'ts, and that should be made aware to all the doctors, the junior doctors and the senior doctors. So everyone should be aware of it, so they know when to stop it, when this kind of reprimanding moves on to bullying. So I think that's important, that we make these things, make these rules, and we create awareness about them to all involved, all the stakeholders. I hope that answers your first question. And the second one was Can you just repeat that for me, or just give me a clue?
Sure, Prof. What I was saying is, we come from an era of racism and apartheid.
Yes. So that's what I was saying. We kind of undermine bullying and as a one-off action, but it is a serious offense. Like I was saying in my presentation, any violation of a right is bullying. So we need to look at it holistically. We need to understand that racism, unsolicited comments, be it sexual or otherwise, all these things are violations, and that can be brought under the umbrella of not only bullying, but rights violation and a crime. So there is need to understand that bullying is not, I somehow think that the word bullying itself does not convey the magnitude of the action. It kind of like bluffing. It's something less serious than lying. But bullying is a serious offense. I wish they would do something about removing that word and putting something more effective. It is an offense, it is a crime, it is a violation. So we need to look at it, and it covers all the gamuts that I mentioned. It could be sexual, withholding information, abuse of power. It comes under many of these different legislations. And I'm sure all these legislations would be in place, but we need to create awareness about them and teach and make it very clear as to how to go about seeking redressal when something happens. And reporting is very important, like the previous speaker was saying. Underreported and unreported bullying incidents and these sort of violations are really detrimental to the whole society. So there is need to encourage reporting, and that would happen when victims are not subjected to secondary victimization. That is, they are treated well when they report. There is no other harassment because of the reporting. You need to protect the witnesses. You need to protect the victims when they report. So when we have these mechanisms in place, then they are encouraged to report. So otherwise, all these different legislations would be redundant if the victim does not use them and report and seek redressal for the violations. So yes, we need to have the capacity building and talk about these things, talk about the violations, talk about the seriousness, talk about the different punishments under that and the way to tackle this issue as well. So if there are programs, if there are interventions to bring about, like I said, the restorative justice process, bring the victim and the bully onto the table and have a kind of a mediation or a reconciliation. That also helps, that takes away the bitterness. But again, acknowledging that you need help is the bottom line, which is a huge challenge. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, so profound, Professor Shekhar. Colleagues, you know that this is the beginning of better things to come. We have created the platform for you to report bullying. We have ensured that it is safe for you to report academic bullying. We have shown you that we will do something about it, as we have done with the perpetrators of bullying who are now not part of our institution. And those who remain to be part of our institution, they have been rehabilitated. We are watching them very closely. We're getting a report all the time. So there is no reason for you. We've heard from our HR Busi that if we do not report, we cannot do anything because we don't know what happens in the 27 disciplines in the medical school. So again, there's a lovely note here from Dr. Makofane, from Professor Hardcastle. Well-spoken, Dr. Makofane, a very balanced and reconciliatory approach is what we need. We all need to work together to advance the country as a whole. Very positive note there from Professor Hardcastle. And again, Dr. Makofane and Dr. Bebe and all of you have just been amazing in terms of reliving the experiences, negative experience that you had. Mary Ann, do we have any other questions or comments?
We have one question by Anonymous. As bullying has been an entrenched culture for such a long time in medicine, what are we doing to heal those who are now leaders, that is senior registrars, consultants, etc.? Doctors in general have faced bullying to varying degrees.
I think that's such an important question. I'm going to ask Professor Shekhar to respond to that, because she did highlight in her presentation that those individuals also need to be treated, they need to be managed, and so that they do not actually continue with the practice. Dr. Shekhar, would you like to address that question?
Yes, thank you. What I think one of the earlier speakers said, that even though they had experienced this type of bullying, they had made a commitment never to repeat that to their juniors. I think that's a good way to begin. And that comes after the healing. So the persons who have been bullied, who have been abused, they acknowledge their abuse and they have got support. We had one of the speakers telling us that there was a lot of support from the family. That is what is important. That is what helps the healing and helps the reconciliation. And this removes the bitterness that we have because of that experience. And this restorative justice process, which I keep harping on, that's very, very crucial to help this healing. You need to confront the person. You need to sit across the table and talk about the impact that his or her action had on you, the impact of the action. And when he understands, there are great chances that he would realize what he has done and he would apologize. So this, we think, does not happen and will not happen, but we have seen trained mediators, trained people who work in this reconciliation process are able to do that, are able to elicit that response. And once that happens, when you feel reconciled with your victimization and you've kind of forgiven the person, and it helps you move on. And the person also is less likely to repeat the bullying. But again, I say all this would happen only if you report. You need to talk about it. We need to address the issue, not just push it under the carpet. And it will not go away. It's not going to go away. It is there to stay unless we address it. We need to have that. We need to be empowered to be able to have that confidence in our administration, in the dean or whoever is the head of the institution, to place that confidence in him that there will be, my problem will be resolved if I talk about it. So the bottom line is reporting. So we need to really encourage the people who are bullied to report and confront the bullier as well.
Thank you so much again, Prof. Shekhar, for really inspiring responses to the questions, very practical and realistic questions. Colleagues, if you want to leave, you're most welcome to go, but we still have people who are asking questions here. So please feel free to leave the platform if you want to. Again, colleagues, there's a comment here. Are there ways of training our experts to mentor, maybe CPD workshops or inclusion, mentoring, anti-bullying? Yes, Dr. I can't see well who wrote whether Dr. L.E. Olirato. We are working on those. You will see that with the one-on-one meetings that we're having with the disciplines. This is where we'll be talking about a whole lot of this. And there's a group, one of the task groups, that is going to focus on mentoring and mentees. So that's coming up where you're Ellie, it's happening. And again, there is a nice comment I see here. Okay, brave warriors, keep on inspiring us, doctors and young and old. And then there's another one I liked here, that this doctor is encouraged. Oh, thank you for your leadership on this platform. The fact that this conversation is taking place and it goes beyond the conversation is very encouraging to someone like myself who is considering returning to academic training, that I may not go through the same narrative that the previous speakers have gone through. So we're happy, Poncho, that has had a positive impact on you. And again, the 3 R's for me are recognize bullying, report bullying, and respond to bullying. You respond to bullying if you are a victim by reporting it. you respond to bullying, that is the managers, by acting on the reports that you are getting. So remember the 3 R's: recognize, respond, and report. Are there any other questions there, Marianne?
No, there's just comments.
Okay. Support and counseling is imperative. And if I may leave you on a positive note, dear colleagues, remember also that bullies, are victims of being bullied. They are victims of challenged childhoods. So please spare a moment to also understand where they come from, not in a way that is perpetrating or encouraging this, but for me, it's a positive way of looking at it and saying, you know what, this person probably experienced this and now is trying to project the negative psychological or social experiences that they had during childhood or during their upbringing. And therefore, I will not take this personal, but I will deal with it in a manner that is active and progressive by reporting it. And I also want to urge the observers of bullying, they also need to say something. Don't keep quiet. And those who are favored and that the blue-eyed boys say something, do not allow, because it is benefiting you, do not keep quiet. You've got to raise it and reject favoritism that is directed to you individually. You also have a responsibility as the favored individuals to reject such favoritism and stand up for those who are being marginalized and bullied. Thanks. I see your hand, Suvira, as we are now going to close. Colleagues, remember, this is available on YouTube. Please feel free to download it. Please feel free to share this with your disciplines. We'll also make sure it's online and it's accessible, and please share with your disciplines wherever you come from. Thanks. Professor Ramlal.
Thank you, Prof. Glover. I just want to say just a few very brief comments. I'm aware of time constraints. Firstly, I think a big thank you and congratulations to you and the Deanship of the country for this milestone in academia. I think the fact that this webinar is taking place is historical, but more importantly, I think it paves the way for us to redress the problems that have been festering, and also gives us an opportunity to heal from what people have experienced. I think just 3 points I want to make, that we have by meeting today and in such constructive engagement over such a sensitive topic, we've broken the conspiracy of silence. And for me, it feels like a boil has been lanced. And this really then paves the way for healing to occur and for change to follow. Secondly, I just want to say that, we seldom in life have a choice over what curved balls and traumatic experiences life throws at us. But as adults, we always have a choice over how we respond. And I echo your call earlier about choosing how we respond. And it is important for us in that response to choose to break this conspiracy of silence, because therein lies our salvation, therein lies the hope for us to eradicate this scourge that is rampant everywhere. And finally, I just want to say that academia, we all come from academic institutions and academic backgrounds, that academia is not defined by intellect alone. I think that's something that we need to address in our curricula. And very simply and succinctly, I just want to share 2 wise phrases from our philosophers, which say that know yourself, know thyself, and secondly, heal thyself. And I think we all owe it to ourselves, whether we are bullies or we have been bullied. Prof. Shekhar has very comprehensively elucidated the underlying causes for such behavior. And we all owe it to ourselves to get to know ourselves better so that we can be better people. And as academic institutions, we do need to start paving the way by teaching, because that was a message from Prof. Shekhar, that when there is undesirable behavior, we don't punish that, but we have to teach and model what the correct behavior is. So let us consider including emotional literacy as a core competency in all our curricula. And let us all be the change that we all would like to see in this world. So thank you once again to all the speakers for the for their bravery, for their courage, the eloquent manner in which they spoke, and really the inspiring stories of how they've handled this in such a mature way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Savira, for that lovely positive note for our closing. Again, colleagues, Prof. Shekhar, I don't know what time it is in India, but thank you so much for such an eye-opening presentation, as I mentioned. I see some of the colleagues here would like to have your slides. If you could share them with us, if you don't mind. So we'll request Mary Ann to share them with you. And of course, the whole presentation, the whole talk has been recorded and it will be available on YouTube. Colleagues, have a wonderful evening. It's a beginning of a new dawn. We've started it. We are going to continue with this. And please remember the 3 R's: recognize, report, and respond.